Welcome you to our final lecture in honor of Native American Heritage Month. And it is going to be an outstanding lecture with Shuká Ken Kaax, who is Kagwantan Yeti, deintaan, and Shuká Hít Sati. And he is the traditional clan leader for the deintaan, very knowledgeable, and he is also the designated clan spokesperson, and he is also chairman of our Council of Traditional Scholars. And he started fishing when he was very young and worked his way up. And
13 years old.
And became captain and was captain for many years and was always at the top of the list in the Hoonah boats when they came back, when they brought their catches in. And in later years, he was a special assistant to the superintendent at Glacier Bay National Park and Preserve until he retired a few years ago. And but all during the recent years, he has also worked very closely with us. And he is, you might say, one of our treasures in terms of his knowledge of traditions and of the language. So very happy to welcome him, and he is going to speak on the history of his clan, the deintaan, the Hoonah deintaan. So welcome, Ken.
Oh, sheesh. This chair makes me lean backwards. I'd like to begin by recognizing any clan leaders here. If you're a clan leader, I'd like for you to raise your hand. Oh, we got one. Oh yes, my buddy over there. How about house leaders? And I'm sure if they're on the internet, there are many of you out there. And I want to begin by thanking the Akwani, the Taku Kwan, Guluchi Shuká Ya Iani Katkat Holtiaz Ichat. Ich lief kwas as de osetichu zuachai. I don't know how many of you understand the Tlingit language. We got one. A little bit. Yeah, I began by thanking the owners of the land, and I thank them that amongst your ancestors' footsteps, mine is in there now, and I thank you for it. And I want to thank Sealaska Heritage for the invitation to come here. I didn't realize that this was the final, and but I think it's really good. I think the Native American Heritage Month, recently I heard that it was we were the, what did they call us? Indigenous creatures. It's kind of comical, but I believe that we got elevated because the creatures take good care of the land. They only take what they need, and they don't destroy the land. So, and that's the way of our ancestors too. Our people only took what they needed, and that was it. They took more than they needed for the winter events that happened, the kluik, but it still was within bounds of what they needed. So I think indigenous creatures is a real good designation for us on Native American History Month. I think it's a real good thing. I'm going to talk about, I know Chuck said history, but I'm going to talk about the three hats in our culture. And I think it's up there on the screen. I'll talk about how it was created and the maker of the hats and the use of the hats. I think that the new leaders that are coming up, young leaders, we don't want to ruin our culture with abuse of our atua. These are very precious, very sacred atu. I almost said objects. They're not objects. They're atu. Our ancestral spirits are in there, and they're used on very important occasions. I will begin by talking about Aatuklag Tlingit. Can you say that? Aatuklag Tlingit. It's we always refer to it in English as the mountain spirit dog hat. Tzach is hat, and this hat has its origins in our culture. There was a young man by the name of Jauk. I'm going to give you a quiz after this too, so write it down. Jauk, can you say it? Yes, he was a very important person in our history. He decided as a young man to become an Icht shaman, and his family supported his wish. He began by, and this is the way they do it. He roamed the outer coast. I don't know if we've got that up there. That's the mountain. Yeah, you can see the Gulf Coast there on the map. He roamed the outer coast. This is according to Willie Marks' Kitinai Chukanedi, and also Mary Wilson Yetl Shawat. It's a very beautiful name, woman of peace, Yetl Shawat. But she was our clan leader, deintaan clan leader. And they both told the story about Jauk, and they were very, very similar, just parallel. There was no difference they might have said the things a little different, but the meaning was there. Jauk began his journey, it's called a spirit journey. He had to go out and find his spirit, Yek, they call it Yek. Yek is different from our own spirit. Ours is, what is, I forgot what it was. Anyway, he was going to go out and seek his Yek. He began by going on the outer coast and roamed there for 4 months. And this is verified by both speakers, both by our clan mother and Willie Marks. He roamed out there, and he came back to below Mount Fairweather. I wanted to comment on the roaming part. Neither one of them designated which way they roamed, east or west on the coast. So that information is, we as Tlingits just take it, you roamed from it. Is that you up there? Is that you up there? I can't really see people because of that glare. But, I do recognize some of you out there. Well, he roamed on the outer coast, and like I said, neither of the traditional stories tells which direction he wrote. He walked, and it's called Shuká on the outer coast that he roamed. And when he came back to the foot of Mount Fairweather, Willie Marks called it Tlingit Ken. That's going to be on the test. What it really means is that on the lap of Mount Fairweather. He came back to the lap of Mount Fairweather. This is a jock that's wandering around out there. And the next journey he had to take was to climb the mountain, Mount Fairweather. And as you can see, there's a lot of ice and snow up there, cliffs. And to me, it looks very, very treacherous. And none of the stories mention anything climbing equipment that he had. It's just the power that our people had and the knowledge that our people had. He began climbing the mountain, Mount Fairweather. And the mountain to us is known as Yeani. Yeani. That's going to be on the test too. It means spirit, land of the spirits. And the rest of the mountains on Mount Fairweather were known as Tlingit, children of Mount Fairweather. And that includes all of Mount Fairweather range. Well, he began climbing the mountain, and he climbed to what I assume is the top of the mountain. And he was very, very tired. But for some reason, part of the requirements to become an Anicht was to butcher landholders. There's no mention as to how he got the landholders there. But the story goes on that Awachash, where Kushta, he cut the Kushta, he butchered the Kushta. When he was done, he was all in. He was tired. He was very skinny because of his long journey along the outer coast and climbing the mountain. Exhausted, he laid back and fell asleep. Tachawajak. He fell asleep. And when he woke up, he could feel something staring at him. And he looked, and in the distance he could see a dog. This was his yake. This was his yake. He tried calling the dog in the Tlingit way we call gates, 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 gates. And that's the way our people call dogs. We don't say here, dog, or something like that, you know. Gates, 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 gates. But the dog hesitated, wouldn't come to him. Finally, the dog came to him, the yake came to him. And it spoke to him in English. Gude sawaiyatan. Gude sawaiyatan. Where are you headed? Where are you headed? And Ejok answered him, Ya ichte awachtawati. Ya ichte. And the dog said, Adei shachane. Adei shachane. I will show you the way down there. I will show you the way down there. And the dog began to lead Ejok down to the beach. Every once in a while, Jock would try to take his own trail, and the dog would tell him, Yak kego, yak kego. No, 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 come this way. Come this way, this is your safety. So, and they kept on going down, and Jock numerous times would try to take his own way, but the dog would turn to him and say, That's the way our people say, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. And come this way. This is for your safety. And while they were journeying down the mountain, they could hear singing in the distance. They could hear voices. And out of the wilderness came the Shatakwan Shao. Shatakwan Shao. It's women from within the mountains. They were singing a song, and as our native women do it, our deintaan women, they do the sway. Yukas kaya honk, yukas kaya honk. They're doing it. They're singing, and I don't know how many of you ever saw our people do it. Did you see it? Let me see your hand. Yeah, good. You know what I'm talking about. Yukas kaya honk. They came out singing, and when they completed their song, they disappeared. The women were gone. The dog was gone. There were yaks, there were spirits. And Ajok was able to make it down to the shore. He completed his journey, he found his yak, and he became an Echt. The story goes on, this is by Lil White. Lil White is a Jukan Shah, and our people are pretty strict on other clans telling the story, but she was kind of the secretary of her dad, Pat Awu. He was a big clan leader. He did all his work through his daughter, Lil White. So she knew a lot about our culture. And I'm sure it's okay for me to say she was my mentor. I grew up learning the language. I grew up with my grandparents. But Lil, I think, polished it. All the rough edges were taken out, and Lil was the voice of her dad. And this story is told by her, and I'm sure that many of our elders know it too. Ajok, you remember him? He was walking the outer coast, and he stopped to rest on a rock. And while he was resting, he looked up at Mount Fairweather. I don't know who's in charge of that thing. And there he stopped. He stopped and he looked up at Mount Fairweather. This is a real awkward chair. It's somehow I slide forward on it. Anyway, while he was resting, he looked out at the mountain. Suddenly, the mountain started to shake, and the ground started to shake, started to tremble. And she looked up there, and the way Lil described it, the mountain opened like patio doors. These are the words of Lil. And out of inside the mountain danced Shatuquan Shao. You remember that? Shatuquan Shao. Women from within Mount Fairweather came dancing out, and they were dancing the same sway dance, lion dance that our deintaan women do. How many of you have ever done that? Any of you do that? We got one. Yeah, you sway and you dance as you sing. And the women were wearing what we call daw. It's an ermine. A lot of you have seen the ermine. It's a white ermine on one ear. And that belongs to the deintaan women. Only deintaan women can wear that daw on one side. And as they swayed, I'm guessing to the right, they wore it on the right ear so that daw would sway. The daw, white ermine in English, they came dancing out. And that's where the story stops. But out of that story, we have a song that came out of it. I neglected to tell you about the Doghead song. Remember when I told you that Hejok was trying to take his own trail and the dog was stopping him? It was the main part of the Doghead song. I think I have a recording. I know I do, but can I find it? I'll try to. I think you'll appreciate it, because in the old days, the men were the big, powerful singers, and the women sang kind of an alto part. And it's changed today, and I really am grateful that the women are powerful singers. They carried the tradition. But I'll see if I can. I didn't want to do the whole thing, you know. It's a spirit song, and we have a lot of deaths in our clans. But I think that last phrase, Shuká Hít, I will walk that way again. That is the main phrase. The rest is chanting. That's the way our spirit songs are, mostly chanting. And I wanted you to hear it. And hear the elders of that time frame. But like I said, thank God for the women. They kept the songs alive, and they're powerful. But it's a challenge for our young men. Some not so young. I'm not so young myself. It's a challenge to pick up where our elders left off. I know that I always say, a stronger person is standing up. That's the Western world. It's changing our lives. And anyway, I wanted to include that. And I talked about the Shatukwan show a little bit ago. And a song came out of that one too. And it's called, I think I better do it back up a ways. There's a Seagull Hat song too. I just want you to hear it. No, I'll do the Trembling Mountain. That's when the mountain opened up like patio doors. This is done by old timers. You'll hear. The part I wanted you to hear was that they're talking about the trembling mountain. And this song is sung at the end of the grieving part within a kuik, when all the cry songs are finished. And they're turning the grieving part over after the removal of grief. Our seagull gals get up and sing this song, and we call it the turnover song at this point of the party, when we're switching to the fun part of kuik. And as you can tell, it's a pretty jazzy song, if I can use that term, within our culture. It's codes in the G-shaw. Wow, that's really cool. And the thing I wanted to point out too at this point, when the turnover happens, that they remove the black and the black scarf or whatever they put on their heads. And after that's over with, and they've done that Yashkashu. Have you ever heard that term? Yashkashu. Yashkashu. It's the term we use at the end of the grieving songs. And the opposite clan thanks the grieving clan and lends their support to it. And to remove the grief. And also the grieving clan thanks them. You know, that's where our culture goes. We reciprocate every time. Reciprocate. I wonder what the Tlingit word. Kochtewa tukhanuch. Anyway, that's when the Trembling Mountain is sung at the end of the grieving part. When this is all over with the grieving part and the removal of grief, and I know that different community, different clans do things different. But in Hoonah, after all the grieving and the turnover is done, the hats are put away. They're put away and back into the trunks. And then the fun part of the party begins. Looks like we're doing pretty good time-wise. Well, anyway, the hat that remains to be introduced to you is seagull hat. The seagull hat out on the outer coast. Anyway, in the middle of, it's between Glacier Bay and Cape Spencer. If some of you are familiar with the outer coast. If you're not, that's the outer coast there. That's the Pacific Ocean, the Gulf of Alaska. Between that, there's a place that's known to our people as Hoonah. Hoonah. And there's discussion about what the word means. One elder, I won't mention a name, translated it as like a smoke hole. Usually that's up on a roof. And Hoonah. But this young translator, he'll forgive me if I'm wrong. To me, Hoonah is outside. On the one outside. Hoonah. That's the way I translate it. And you know, that the elders, they have top priority in what they say. This is just my version of it. There's an arch out there, a rock arch, that's called Hoonah. And on the arch is like a cliff. The kittiwakes would nest on that cliff. In tradition, I don't know what the origin is. We only tell the story of our people took the grieving person out there, took him ashore. Adehas na kochchin, duin, yandehas na kochchin. Ukawa, wikau da gwatnuch, wakeas da kinch, wikiksha. They took a grieving individual out there. It's usually the opposite clan. Am I losing it? they took a grieving person out there and they beat a drum, and I've heard that some people used even a gun to get the kittiwakes to fly. And when this grieving person was ashore, they beat the drum, and they yelled to, I know some people used it. Well, Richard Dalton, I have it. I think we have somebody here. Was there somebody that can do the Sealaska cry? You're up to bat. You can just copy, all of this. Okay. Listen.
You are now about ready to hear what is over there at Sugarloaf, at Grace Harbor. The seagulls. This is our camp over there. That's our deep there.
Can you hear?
These are from their truck. Sunday are Juneau.
I keep sliding forward. Well, anyway, this particular recording was done in Glacier Bay in 1992 when the clans went over to Glacier Bay, and we did what are called a peaceful demonstration. And the elders, we took our totems, we took our atu over there, and the elders made some great speeches, and I think I have a recording of it. I do have a recording of it. And we had Kagwantan, George Obert spoke, Sam Hannon, Shuká Hít, he's the Wishkitan leader, spoke. Richard Dalton, they all spoke, talking about Glacier Bay being our homeland. And I have their speeches, and it's really, really touching to hear it. And Amy Marvin, Lil White, all our leaders that spoke there in Glacier Bay. And I always say, when I'm over there, Jesu, ja as tude duach, as to sa. Their voices are echoing through the trees. It's still happening. And when Raven danced down the beach to pull in what was a according to Richard Dalton, was like Noah's Ark, was drifting out in the Gulf of Alaska. Raven saw it out there, and he wondered how he was going to pull in this ark. And he happened to have a octopus arm. So he danced down there and pulled in this ark. And the story is, it's all of our foods was in this ark. But in Glacier Bay, what we did, you pulled in the ark, which was a skiff that had a screen that was painted by a Wanda Culp, beautiful screen. It had all the, are you here? Oh. Yeah, that was a real historic occasion that Wanda painted all the clans of Hoonah, including the ones that were coming in by marriage. And the ark had all of it. And symbolically, the raven danced down to the beach and had this staff that was like an octopus tentacle, and symbolically grabbed the ark and pulled the ark in. That was the skiff with all of the Hoonah clans in there, and pulled it to the beach. Symbolically, this was pulling all Hoonah clan back into the park, which is our homeland. At that time, we weren't recognized, and I think that was a very, very historical occasion. And Amy, Little White, were singing as the raven danced down the beach. They were singing Yun-Ha, Yun-Ha, and Lil had a cane. It was a sandy beach. As she was singing, she was drumming with her cane. And I always say, when I give a presentation, I worked for the Park Service, that the holes on the sand are still there. And their voices, the voices of the elders, like I said, are still echoing amongst the trees. And one of the things we did was we had the Gunkatsiki there. We do that on a special occasion. Mostly the Gunkatsiki is done at a kuik for an individual, which all the clan members are mentioned into the dish. And Gunkatsiki means fire dish. And we did that in Glacier Bay. They also put tobacco in the water there when we were coming into Glacier Bay. So, anyway, I think I'm about done. And we'll have questions and comments. Yeah. Yes.
For speaking up. This has been really good. You've touched my heart and soul, Ken Kaax. Sorry I have to go right now, but I want to tell you, Kaax.
Thank you, Wanda. Wanda was very instrumental in the participation of getting recognition in Glacier Bay. Her and Mary Rudolph were real powerhouses in the that really kept our feet to the fire. And we finally got recognition.
So yes, so now we will entertain questions. Are there any questions that from?
Ken, you know, in our culture, it's appropriate that when a raven speaks, that a opposite the eagle clan responds and validates, you know, your words, so that your words are not lost and are not left to, you know, floating. So, so on behalf of the Shuká Hít and the Eagles here, you know, Gunas Chish for your words. Thank you for sharing the stories of your clan hats, the deintaan hats and stories. You know, it is as if your knowledge is filling, you know, our box of knowledge that we will use for our younger people in education programs. And you know, if you were listening closely, it wasn't just stories. Ken was providing us lessons, reminders and cues about our protocols and our relationships to clans. So Gunas Chish, it's as if you are filling our hearts with courage to continue our culture.
Gunas Chish. Gunas Chish.
Gunas Chish. I stand as a Kagwantan woman, and I recognize the gift that you give and have given and will continue to give is priceless. Gunas Chish, and thank you so much, so much.
Gunas Chish.
Gunas Chish, Hoonah Huichat Dosak, Kagwantan Ayachat. Shuká Hít, deintaan Yeti, and deintaan the Shunk. It's such a gift. Gunas Chish so much. My children and myself are still learning all of these, and I have memories of the stories you're sharing, the songs. I can see my grandmother's dancing, my aunties dancing. And I remember being a child at my grandmother's foot, Julia. And at that time in the 70s, at the Creeks, so much of it was in Tlingit. And I remember wondering, what does this mean? You know, and these stories are like gifts. Now I understand the timing and the words that were being shared, you know. My role as a child, my grandmother would often remind me to be quiet, so I sat quietly. But now I get to learn as an adult, and I know my children will also continue learning. And so, Gunas Chish for the gift.
I'll also speak as an eagle from the Shuká Hít clan to thank a noble leader who has given us a gift today. He has taken us back in time. He's taken us back to see our ancestors and how they related to the land and how the spirits of the land came to us and supported us. We have this special relationship to the land and to the wildlife and animals. And Kenny, you have made that real for us today. I just feel our people. I feel our people on the land.
Yeah.
I want to thank the deintaan I want to thank the deintaan women, deintaan Sha, for standing with you, standing together with you and showing people how our culture is. This is the way of our culture, where we have respect for one another and for all of our clans. But I also want to speak as a Tlingit person to say that we know that Glacier Bay belongs to the deintaan, that Glacier Bay belongs to the Chukanadi, that Glacier Bay belongs to the Kagwantan, to the Wushkitan. And the day will come when we are going to have that land back, not only symbolically, but in real ways. We will not stop, and our children will not stop until we can have our land back in our name, not just symbolically. And your speech, your talk today has shown us that our links to that area are not just historical, but they go back in time. They go back to the times when the glaciers were still moving, when by our own actions, our people called the glacier. Yeah. So Kenny, I just want to say, what a great gift you have given us today. Goodness cheese, goodness cheese.
Kenny. This is my name is Louise Kadinger. I'm the aatuklag. I'm Luknahati, Wishkitan Yeti, and deintaan Dachan. My grandfather is Kahinook, and I remember when being at a party and seeing the seagull hat being put on him and them talking about it. So it's always nice to see this because it always reminds me of my family, and I really appreciate you bringing these stories forward. Good.
Gunatchish Kenny, Satuk Yuchatuasak, Linda Ballardi, Tlingit Ken Kaax. Gunatchish. I remember my aunt Yachwan Tla telling us the similar stories, and I sure appreciate hearing them again. Gunatchish.
I'll add a little bit here. I know my notes are back there, and I didn't want to leave some out, but this one I think is really important. When we brought all our atu out at Glacier Bay, and they talked about it, our hats, what they meant, and how it, Glacier Bay, all of them have their origins in Glacier Bay. But Richard Shakely, I remember his speech. He says, "These are our deeds, our hats. This is our history. National Park Service, where's your deed? Let me see your deed." But it still echoes in my mind. And I missed it. Anyway.
Goodness, Chish, you know, those kind of stories that only a few people know, people who heard him. That's just wonderful for you to share them with us. Goodness, Chish.
Goodness, Chish.
We will be taking a collection to get Kenny a new chair so he doesn't get
I keep sliding forward on it.
Well, thank you very much again. We had 55 people online watching.
Oh, really? Oh, good.
So,
sheesh.
we hate to bring this to a close, but it was momentous. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that what Richard Shakely was, wow, that was powerful. That with all the, they had all the regalias and the hats there in Bartlett Cove, and he called it, "This is our deeds." So, yeah, well, yeah, that Ian Schachtleynik, the Katihan, Tlachosa, Achtuik, Achtuik, Ea Choltreni, ho, Glacier, Achedi Sahi, yeah, that Glacier. Yeah, I just wanted to thank all of you for coming and listening, and you warmed my spirit to see you here, and I thank you for it. Glacier. Yewa. Glacier. This thing wants to, it's kind of a, it must be leaning downward.
Yeah, it must be not. Maybe the back's too far back or something.
Yeah.